true justice. Show mercy and compassion to one another. The Lord is righteous. He loves justice. Love tenderly those who are socially powerless. Uphold the cause of the oppressed. Maintain the right of the afflicted and destitute. Act justly, love mercy, and walk humbly. God's law is written on the heart of every human being. Treat people with protection and care.
Hi, everyone. This is Mark Curran, your host of WSFI Catholic Radio. The show is Cross-Examination. We're on 88.5 FM and 750 AM, WSFI FM, WNDZ AM. And our guest today is Michael Hichborn, and you see behind him, he's got the sign for the Lepanto Institute. Michael, welcome, and thank you for being with us.
Thanks so much for having me on. It's a pleasure.
So, Michael, you're the president of Lepanto Institute. You're a well-known figure in the pro-life community. You've spent about 8+ years American Life League's director. Prior to that capacity, did a lot of research as to what the Catholic Church is doing, what they promote that might not be consistent with the teachings of the Catholic Church. Tell us a little more just about who is Michael Hichborn and what you do and how you got motivated. I know you're living in Virginia currently. You have 8 kids, so you're a natural family planning guy, or at least take the gospel and the teachings of the church seriously with regards to the message of life.
Well, as a friend of mine told me, there's an old Sicilian proverb that each new baby comes with a loaf of bread under each arm. So we definitely like to live that message. The history, my history. I have a degree in political science and economics. I have a degree in curricular development and education. I helped open 2 local Catholic high schools. Then I worked for American Life League, where I was using a lot of the research skills that I developed while I was in college.
So you went to Christendom College?
I did. Yeah,
I've heard their advertisements on WSFI and also on Relevant Radio for years and years. I don't really know much about it. What is that Christendom College all about?
So Christendom College is a small liberal arts Catholic college in Front Royal, Virginia. And it's a wonderful place. I met my wife there. My eldest son is currently going there. And I'll just tell you, when I had no ambition or intention to ever go to college. I hated school, but when I first stepped foot on Christendom College, because my best friend wanted to take a visit, I instantly fell in love. It was like love at first sight. It truly was. And I knew instantly that that's where I had to be. It was a great place.
Yeah. Well, please continue.
So I started working at American Life League. I was the director of Defend the Faith, which meant that I was charged with trying to, figure out why bishops weren't upholding Canon 915, while also looking into various projects related to the Catholic Church, because we were finding that they were undermining the pro-life movement.
So what is Canon 915?
Canon 915 is the code of canon law that dictates that those who are obstinately persistent in grave manifest sin, such as pro-abortion politicians, are not to be admitted to Holy Communion, which means the impetus is on the one distributing communion, because Canon 916 says if you're aware of a mortal sin on your soul, you're not to present yourself for communion. So there are 2 canons related to the reception of Holy Communion, one directed to the penitent, who is to, kind of monitor himself, and one directed toward the priest, who says, okay, this person is a public scandal. I'm not to give them Holy Communion. It's just, anyway, so I was in charge of that. And I also was looking into organizations that were undermining the pro-life movement, which led us to investigate the Campaign for Human Development, and also Catholic Relief Services, Catholic Charities, and various other charitable outfits. And what we started to find is that there is a concerted effort among so-called Catholic charitable movements to not only liberalize, but to kind of circumvent Catholic teaching on certain things. And when I found that the CCHD was funding organizations that were promoting abortion and contraception and Marxism, it was rather shocking.
What is a CCHD?
The Catholic Campaign for Human Development. And when I first put out my reports on this, I expected the bishops were going to say, wow, I had no idea. We're going to fix that. Thank you so much. Instead, I got way more pushback than I ever expected. It was kind of a disproportionate response. And with that disproportionate response, I kind of scratched my head a little bit and said, well, why would you react this way unless you're trying to hide something? So that caused me to dig a little bit further. And then I thought, well, let's take a look at Catholic Relief Services, CRS. And I started digging around there and I found serious problems. And of course, the pushback that I got was even harder. In fact, CRS tried to get me fired from my position by sending a fax to every board member of American Life League while I was working there. And it was just, again, extremely disproportionate, which once again caused me to dig a little bit harder. So through the course of my work there at American Life League, we came to the conclusion after several discussions that my research had kind of expanded beyond the scope of what American Life League was set up for. And we agreed that I would leave and start my own thing. And that was Lepanto Institute. We started it in 2015 and I've been going ever since.
Well, you're not familiar with the late Mayor Richard J. Daley of Chicago. And he had a saying, make no waves, back no losers.
Nah.
And that's how you survive politically and everything else. So obviously you're out there, you're making a lot of waves, and some of these causes that you're taking up are going to be loser causes. And it's a battle, isn't it?
Oh, sure it is. And the truth is that I'm not out there looking for any kind of results. This is an undertaking that is a necessity because people are not looking into these organizations. There is no one else who is doing the kind of digging into these charitable groups that we've been doing. Yeah. So it's a work of necessity, and we put it into Our Lady's hands. Whatever the results are, they're entirely hers.
So I don't know if you know, by way of background, I was a sheriff of Lake County for 12 years. And then I was a Republican nominee for U.S. Senate in Illinois, and I was a Republican nominee for Supreme Court in the 2nd District. And so I've got a long life in politics and what have you as well. And I see the hypocrisy that you see, and it's just so infuriating. And it just seems like we're losing battles everywhere. And I mean, let's be honest, some of the fingers got to be pointed towards Rome, obviously. And you see the people that earnestly and sincerely want to follow the teachings of the church and love the Holy Mother Church, that they're very critical of the Holy Father and they're very critical of the magisterium. And for some people, that sits poorly. And I don't think that it should. One of the things that I've been doing over Lent is watching as many movies as I can about the saints. And yesterday I was watching a movie about St. John of the Cross. And they tried to excommunicate him. And they despised him in his own religious order. And they wanted him out. And they wanted to laicize him. And then you could say the same thing happened to St. Padre Pio. And you could say the same, you just keep going on, and you see that, saint after saint was at war with much of the hierarchy of the church, or the way the church was being run at the time. And the church has, I love the book, The Triumph and the Glory of the Catholic Church. I don't know if you ever read that. A fantastic book. It's, bigger than Winds of War, and it takes you through the history of the church and how it survived all these incredible times. But by the same token, there's all sorts of ugliness in our history too. And what would have happened if everybody just decided, I have a queasy stomach, I don't want that fight, I'm just going to worry about myself? Where would we be?
Well, we have to remember that the Catholic Church is not an individual religion. We are a religion that is intended to be a family. And when we consider that, yes, I am my neighbor's keeper, I am my brother's keeper, true love really means directing our attention to the salvation of others without any recompense or desire for recompense, and even to the point of sacrificing ourselves for that other person. It doesn't necessarily mean that we always have to be looking for someone to assist and save and that kind of thing. We have people in our own immediate families that we have to attend to first. But if we don't look at the Catholic faith as something that is supposed to be it's collective. We are all of the same spiritual beliefs.
Yeah.
And if we're not, then we're not united, and there's disunity, and then there's fighting, and then it gets even worse. But yeah, that's absolutely how we're supposed to look at it.
Catholic Relief Services, I don't know that much about them, but nonetheless, I've received the envelopes in the mail and I've sent them money. You know, when
Mhm.
there's been like earthquakes and or hurricanes and
Yep.
areas of the world have been wiped out, and these were areas that the Catholic Church had some influence in, and I've sent them money. So just tell us a little bit about them. I think that's where we're going to start today in terms of not upholding the mission of the church and what you found and why we need to be concerned.
Sure. So Catholic Relief Services, it was it came out of the Second World War. When World War II had ended, I mean, Europe was absolutely demolished, and people were without homes, people were without food, they were without water, they were without sanitation. So in the United States, the U.S. bishops said we really ought to be sending relief to the poor people that have been demolished by this war, that have been just torn apart. So they started collecting blankets, and they started collecting food and sending them overseas. And this was kind of the beginning of Catholic Relief Services. It was the U.S. Catholic Bishops' War Council, I think is what it was originally called. And then it became Catholic Relief Services over the years. In 1966, the U.S. government created USAID. The U.S., I can't remember what the acronym stands for, but it's basically Aid and Development for Overseas Relief from taxpayer money. After
the Red Cross.
Yeah. Well, so in the 1970s, I believe it was the 1970s, Catholic Relief Services started receiving funding. They got grants from USAID. But the problem is USAID was set up specifically as a population control program. Actually written into its charter is the requirement that any country that receives Catholic or receives USAID funds has to submit reports to the federal government indicating what it is doing in order to reduce its own population rates. That's a requirement of the reception of USAID funding. So for CRS to receive grant money from USAID to implement USAID programs is problematic in and of itself. But by extension, what winds up happening is that CRS has started implementing USAID funded programs that are of themselves problematic, where they start including, sex education, comprehensive sex education programs. And then they start kind of working in family planning programs, which CRS talks about natural family planning in order to reduce fertility rates. Not just because they're trying to help people understand their own fertility cycle, but it's a specific purpose.
Who oversees, who's the board of Catholic Relief Services? Who are the board?
Well, CRS has two boards. It has a lay board and it has a bishop board. And it's supposed to be 50% plus one for the bishops and the other 49% for the laity. And there is a bishop's chairman who oversees Catholic Relief Services. It is the official overseas aid and development project of the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops. So ostensibly, it's supposed to be completely run and managed and overseen by the U.S. bishops. But the fact of the matter is it's actually more a government agency or an extension of the federal government than it is of the bishops.
So there's Catholic Relief Services, Catholic Charities, a lot of these Catholic entities, they seem to not have much in the way of oversight and in terms of ensuring that there's orthodoxy in them. Is that fair?
Well, it depends on what we mean by oversight. They claim that, and by they, I mean the bishops, claim that they have board review, they've got a moral theologians review, they've got all kinds of review processes to go over the various projects of CRS. If
Can we stop Lepanto Institute? How does that factor into, what is the mission of Lepanto Institute?
well, it's an extension of the research that we were doing at American Life League, where we are trying to help people to understand where their financial contributions are going with their charitable donations. We believe, and this is something that came up when I was talking to individuals working for the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. They kept asking me, why are you releasing those reports? And I said, because you're asking for funds from people who believe that what you're using these funds for is for the good of souls and the good of the church. But the fact of the matter is, you are financing organizations that are promoting abortion, contraception, homosexuality, Marxism, and so forth. And they are owed that information. The people who are sitting in the pews that you're asking money from are owed that information, and you're not willing to tell them. That's why I'm releasing these reports. So that's what we're doing at American Life League. We're trying, or at Leponto Institute, we're trying very much to help people know where their money is going and which contributions that they make are safe or not safe, depending upon certain criteria.
Yeah, I think the work that you do is incredibly important, and I would encourage people to contribute to you. Now, we have other, groups that were out there. I don't know if you were familiar with Church Militant and Michael Voorhees. That shut down. The founder of that had a lot of baggage. He, didn't have as clean a walk through life as yourself. But it went away. It's kind of tough, that these things seem to that are the watchdogs sometimes seem to explode. Taylor Marshall, they go after him, with holds barred, and you can talk about other great apologists that try to go after the truth, and the enemies really come after them, don't they?
Yes, they do. And they look for the enemy will look for every crack possible. And this is one of the reasons why I focus so much on the facts. And I try to keep my personality out of it as much as possible, because the devil likes to use pride as the way to drag people down.
Beautiful. Beautiful. So your organization is out front, and you're not. You're in the back, and I think that's a beautiful thing. Catholic Relief Services, should we not give them money, or what's your opinion?
I strongly object to Catholic Relief Services, and I encourage people not to contribute to them, because I've been personally doing investigations into CRS since 2010. Yeah. I sat down in 2010 with Bishop Kikanis, who was then the head of CRS, and I showed him several pages of documentation that proves that CRS's partners are engaged in the promotion of contraception, condoms, and that kind of thing. And rather than focus on what I was looking at and what I was showing to him, he kept saying, well, we do a lot of good work too. I mean, you're not talking about the good things that we do. And I said, Your Excellency, I didn't fly 3,000 miles out to meet with you to pat you on the back. I flew out here because I found some problems that I thought you would like to resolve. And he said, oh, yes, we take this very seriously. One of the things that I showed him was that CRS was a part of an international Marxist organization called the World Social Forum. And when I showed him all the documentation I had on that, now at the time, I had internal access to this organization. I could get into their back end because I was able to surreptitiously sign up as an adjunct member of this organization. So I got access to all their documents. Well, by the time I touched back down in Washington, D.C., I was completely locked out. How did that happen?
Yeah, so they won't let you have access to any of that, huh?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's really crazy, and it's frightening, and it's sad, and it's sick. And it kind of begins in Rome, though, doesn't it, with the Holy Father?
Well, the problems precede him. These issues, and I've actually investigated quite a bit. Caritas Internationalis. Caritas Internationalis is a Vatican-run agency that is responsible for all of the other. It's an umbrella group for all of the other international aid and development agencies of various countries around the world belonging to the Catholic Church. Catholic Relief Services is the one from the United States. Development and Peace is the one from Canada. And then in England, you've got CAFOD. In Ireland, you've got Troker, and so forth. the Caritas Internationalis is on the governing body of the World Social Forum, which, as I mentioned, is an international communist organization. They march through the streets literally with hammer and sickle flags, carrying banners of Karl Marx. They are communists. It was set up by communists down in Brazil. For Caritas Internationalis to be on the governing body of this entity is a scandal. But they are. And then as we investigated members of Caritas Internationalis, we found that they are very much in favor of promoting the Sustainable Development Goals of the United Nations, which unfortunately Pope Francis is also promoting. And the Sustainable Development Goals are also extremely problematic. They are pro-abortion, they are pro-homosexual, and they are Marxist in character, meaning they reflect the planks and the goals of the Communist Manifesto. So we started pointing out these problems with Caritas, and that also falls in with the problems we're finding with CRS and all of these other aid agencies belonging to the Catholic Church. There is a very serious problem here.
So, Michael, one of the things that is a tenet of the Catholic Church would be that the ends do not justify the means.
That's correct.
And that's been a basic tenet of Catholic teaching forever. So we can't engage in evil acts on any level saying that, well, in the end, it's going to be okay because it'll be for the greater good. That type of logic is contrary to the teachings of the Catholic Church. And I listen to what you're saying, and it seems like they don't really care about that. And when we go back to like the jab, the vaccine. So, is it a fact that one of the vaccines that they were promoting, or both of them, the technology to have the vaccine came from aborted feces?
They were tested. Yeah, they were tested on aborted fetal tissue for sure.
Okay, so does that right there, does that make it something that really Catholics probably shouldn't participate in?
I think so. I mean,
certainly there's that argument.
Yeah, you bet. And if it was cultured on, and I don't know if it was, but if it was cultured on aborted fetal tissue, even so much more to avoid that particular.
Right. So you see that time and time again that we're kind of in bed with the evil, and we think that that's okay, but it's not okay, is it?
Well, certainly not. And we have found more often that Catholic organizations belonging to, I would say establishment Catholic organizations, are willing to compromise. In fact, during Carolyn Wu was the CEO of Catholic Relief Services for 5 years. She retired from CRS, I think, in 2016. It was either 2016 or 2017. It was somewhere around there. In her exit speech, which she delivered at the USCCB's annual assembly in November of that year, she was talking about the work of CRS and the wonderful things that they do. And then she said, one of the worst things that I ever heard, and this is a quote from her, one of the worst things I ever heard was, Carolyn, we cannot compromise. And then she went on this long diatribe about how, well, if we can't compromise, then how can we ever have these collaborations? And she said this tearfully, like she was crying as she was saying this.
Yeah. So you're doing great work, and we're really grateful for you. You're listening to Michael Hichborn. He's the CEO, the director of Lepanto Institute in Virginia, father of 8 children, happily married, and he's talking to us about what his institute does in terms of essentially shining the light on Catholic entities, Catholic in name only sometimes, that are engaged in incredible evil. And he's trying to allow the parishioners, the people that sit in the seats, the lay Catholics, to know about this so that they can be more discerning in where they give their money. And we're really grateful for that, Michael. I guess when I hear you talk and what you're saying, I agree with it, but it seems like we're becoming an increasing minority. And my spiritual director for a long time was a guy named Father C. John McCloskey. He's from out that way. I don't know if you've ever heard of him.
Oh, yes.
Okay, so you know Father CJ. And Father CJ was a priest of the Opus Dei, and he, for the listeners out there, you just want to Google him and see all the people that came into the Catholic Church through his guidance. It's just an unbelievable list, and he's one of probably the brightest priests that I've ever met for sure. And he died a couple of years ago, early onset Alzheimer's. But Father CJ said that the church, he was quoting Cardinal George, and he liked that quote, that essentially the church is going to be a remnant pretty soon. And, as Cardinal George said that he expected to die in his bed, his successor would die in prison, and his successor would die against the wall, meaning he'd be a martyr. And the church, they destroy the church, and the church would be rebuilt, stronger and better. And unfortunately for us, we have Colonel Supich that succeeded him, and he's not quite the martyr that Cardinal George would have been. And so we're kind of in bed with the culture, moving in the wrong direction as the culture from the hierarchy perspective. So when you hear that, do you think that's true? I mean, you're out there, you're doing this, but how many Catholics actually even care?
That really is the big problem. We do have a fairly strong support base, praise be to God.
Yeah,
Otherwise, we couldn't do the work that we're doing. On the other hand, trying to convince the bishops and, outside of present company, establishment Catholic media does not want to touch this topic. They they will avoid it like the plague.
right. And we're talking about like UTN TV.
Yep. And National Catholic
Yeah.
Register and
Yeah, National Catholic Register has always been, kind of left. And I don't like the
the reporter's been left. The register belongs to EWTN.
Yeah. I don't like the labels left, right, because
Yeah.
ultimately Christ he was a lefty on so many issues. If we're going to use those labels,
Right.
it's not really fair. I mean, we have, we're Catholic. We're not Republicans or Democrats, right or left. So in terms of the church, in the direction, do you see that there's not, it's going to be a much smaller church?
It already is.
Yeah. So having run for all these offices, here's one of the things that I thought, was my opinion. I think that the church should receive its tax exempt status, 100%. But I don't think the church should get a penny of government money.
I completely agree.
Yeah, I think that that's what makes the church the whore of Babylon, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
People can throw stones at me for saying that and what have you, but folks, I've been running for office for 20 years. I've gone into churches where they blatantly promoted the Democrats, and I ran as a Democrat. I ran as a Republican. I'm the only thing I am is Catholic. I'm pro-life. There's not a Catholic issue. There's not a single sentence in the Catechism I disagree with.
Right.
And I believe in preferential treatment for the poor, and I was a leader on immigration and everything else before the borders were so wide open. I definitely thought that permanent status was something we should be doing for the people that have been here, maybe still. So I try to be Catholic, nothing else.
Mm-hmm.
But I will tell you something: is states like Illinois that have a one-party rule, the Catholic leaders, many of them in this area, will pander to the Democratic Party like nobody's business, and they promote the Democratic Party like nobody's business, and they are in bed with the Democratic Party like nobody's business, and they know that the Democratic Party in Illinois stands for the killing of babies and the destruction of religious liberty. So how do they justify being in bed with such an incredible evil? Well, they don't, but they're getting a check, a government check, a
Mm-hmm.
taxpayer check, and that's bought their silence, that's bought their acquiescence, and it's a complete evil. And I think if you or we wake up, we're becoming a smaller and smaller number out there. But at some point, we got to wake up and say, you know what? Don't give any money to the church. Let charities form independently if you want for taxpayer dollars. Really, what this acts as is a substitute to the church as well. When you talked about Marxism and everything, and these people, they want the ones on the left that want to rule and control. They want you to bow at the altar of government and make the church irrelevant. And that's what they're doing. The government, Catholic church is run by the government. When I ran for office, I had a horrible reception from Catholic Charities, from some of the
Mm.
people on there. And I'll tell you what happened, Christopher. I went in there and was pro permanent status for some of the people that have been here for a long time, and talked about a humane treatment of immigration. You know why I talked about it? I talked about it from a consistent ethic of life, as Cardinal George said. Cardinal Bernardine, the seamless garment, but consistent ethic of life. And I talked about how, we want to be pro man, one woman, marriage. We shouldn't be breaking up nuclear families that easily. So we needed to contemplate all these things, and everything that I believed with regards to immigration, even though it was at odds with most of the Republican Party, was because I was a Catholic. And you know what they said to me? A number of them, they were so angry.
Mm.
It was my faith that was driving this. What does religion have to do with anything?
Yeah.
They didn't care that I was on their side.
Right.
They were
Right.
part of Catholic Charities, and they hated hearing about religion so much that smoke was coming out of their ears. I mean, it's just, I don't, and there's no vetting process to see if somebody hired by Catholic Charities is actually a Catholic, or actually believes what the Catholic Church teaches, or actually believes in the basic tenets of Christianity, because a lot of them don't. My guess, it's just a guess, is most of them don't. Almost all of them don't. Isn't that crazy?
Well, yeah. And the thing is, because Catholic Charities and Catholic Relief Services receive large amounts of government money for Catholic Relief Services, it's almost $1 billion a year. They receive gobs of government money, and because of that, they can't hire exclusively Catholics. They are forbidden from doing so. And what's more is that because they are receiving government funds, they are forbidden from engaging in any kind of evangelization. So when Catholic Relief Services sends their teams out to Rwanda or Cameroon or any of the other countries around the world, they are not allowed to try and encourage people to save their souls by starting to believe in what the church teaches and believe and understanding even who Jesus is. They're not allowed to do that. And that begs the question, well, what makes Catholic Relief Services Catholic?
Yeah, that's a terrific answer. Just got done watching a movie, The Mission. I don't know if you've ever seen
I
that.
love that movie.
Yeah, with Robert De Niro, and it's a
Mhm.
terrific movie. And Liam Neeson and Jeremy Irons, a lot of great actors are in there. And essentially, it's that when they go out on this mission, they're saving lives of these indigenous people, but
Mhm.
at the same time they're evangelizing, and that's really their true intent, is to make sure that the people that are seeing all this goodness know that it's coming from Jesus Christ.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
So one of the other things that Father C. John McCloskey used to say was that it is over. Listeners out there, just newsflash, okay? This is a guy who prophesied so many things, and who had, I'd encourage you to look up his name, Father Charles John McCloskey. The most famous people in American society became Catholics through his guidance. And that includes Larry Kudlow, Sam Brownback, Tony Snow, Newt Gingrich, Laura Ingraham, Robert Novak, Robert Bork, all these people attribute, Bernard Nathanson, the great abortionist, all these people will attribute their conversion story to Father C. John McCloskey. He was just a brilliant mind off the charts, the Ivy League educated and everything else. And what he said, folks, was, it's over for America. It's over. And he said that 20 plus years ago. He said, we're well beyond the tipping point. He said, absent a miracle, there's no saving this country. We're headed in a direction that in the wrong direction. We've been headed in the wrong direction for too long, and you can't just right the ship. One turn of the ship is not going to do it. President Trump, even if you're supporting him, and he did a lot of great things as president, he's not going to be able to save this nation.
Mm-mm.
So that being said, I think we go back to what Mother Teresa said, that we're called to be faithful and not successful, right? But we're going to need a miracle, aren't we?
Well, it depends on what we're looking for. What's the end game? I mean, saving the country, does that mean saving the financial institutions? Does that mean saving the infrastructure? Ultimately, I think if we're going to save the heart and soul of this country, we've got to start talking about Jesus Christ. We've got to start talking about the problems of sin, avoiding sin, actually putting an end to public sin, such as the pride celebrations and the drag queen story hours and the comprehensive sex education that they're introducing to a bunch of kids in high school or even grade school. If we want to have a good moral country, then we have to start training people in what it means to be moral and how to have your soul saved by belief and profession of belief in Jesus Christ, in the Catholic Church. That's what we have to focus on.
Yeah, I agree 100%. So I have another question for you. So I just got done watching Godfather 3.
Oh.
And Al Pacino, how the Catholic Church elevates him and makes him out to be this wonderful Catholic because he writes them a check.
Mm-hmm.
And, all the cardinals parade around and say great things about the Godfather. And I look at our church and I look at like the high schools, some of the high schools that I'm well aware of. And they have like plaintiff lawyers' names on the building, and they have other names of people that are in bed with the Democratic Party that have killed or responsible for the killing of more babies than you would ever want to know, just because of the checks that they've written to these pro-abort politicians and to what have you. So their names are on the building, and they're paraded around as the great Catholics. And we sell our soul, don't we, for money? Aren't we just become whores in the Catholic Church, don't we?
You bet we do. It's funny. I remember when I was a kid, there was a local Catholic, a prominent Catholic in our area, who he did a lot of philanthropy. He gave to the library, he gave to various project works in the town. And when he died, of course, there was a big to-do about it, and they put his name and a plaque with his face on it at the local library. And I remember thinking, he's not here to appreciate this. I was a 10-year-old kid, and I'm going, he's not here to appreciate this. Why are we doing this? We're honoring somebody, but he's dead, and he's not a saint. We're not looking to ask him for prayers or intercession or anything like that. It's just some sort of base human respect. But what does that profit anybody? Here I am, 10 years old, and that's how I'm thinking. And the thing is, if our names are not written in the book of life, you can have your name on every building in the world. If it's not written in the book of life, then it's worthless.
Yeah, amen. I'm going to share something that Cardinal George is dead for a few years, and I just feel called at this moment to share this. So I knew him pretty well. We were having dinner one time, and we were talking about Richard M. Daley, who was the mayor of Chicago, his wife, Maggie Daley. And he was telling me about how Richard M. Daley became so hostile to all the teachings of the Catholic Church while he was mayor. And he was talking about her in her role in this. And Cardinal George said to me, I hope she's in purgatory, but I have my doubts. Mm-hmm. Well, DePaul University downtown went ahead and named the building after her, and they continue to do stuff like that. I mean, when is it going to end? When are we going to stop promoting people that stand for intrinsic evil, people that are out to destroy the church? Why do we give them cover by letting them put their names up there? Why do we parade them around as though they're great Catholics?
Because the bishops are giving them Holy Communion. That's why.
Yeah.
So we have Catholics in the highest positions of power in government right now. Nancy Pelosi, Joe Biden, they're going to their church and they're pretending to be Catholic. And this is what people are looking at. And they're like, wow, if that's a Catholic, I don't want to be a Catholic.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah.
No, you're exactly right. And the thing is, if you look around the world, you'll see that many of the leaders in various countries around the world, the apostates, are apostate Catholics, just like Joe Biden. Yeah. And the ones that are being opposed primarily by Pope Francis are the ones like the guy that was just elected in Argentina, or the guy that actually won in Brazil. Very solid Catholic, very pro-life, very pro-family, but that was overturned in a rigged election, very similar to what we had here, and Pope Francis backed the socialist. So it's pretty egregious.
You have a lot of Catholics giving money to Joe Biden, Nancy Pelosi. I mean,
yeah.
When are they going to get called out for that?
Actually just got a whole bunch of data points showing. So we reviewed the financial contributions from people working for various Catholic institutions, CRS, Catholic Charities, a bunch of different Catholic institutions. And what we found is a massively disproportionate amount of funds going to pro-abortion politicians, Democrats primarily. Catholic Relief Services, incidentally, except for one person, and I think we wound up with about 5,000 data points on this. One person since 2018 from Catholic Relief Services donated or contributed to Republicans. All of the other contributions went to Democrats. That's a statistical impossibility.
There's actually several articles in the last several years showing that Catholic Charities has employed numerous criminals. And when I say criminals, these are people that have extorted Catholic Charities, or they have used the fund, the access to the funds, to commit fraud. So at what point is Catholic Charities going to be held to the fire to initiate a vetting process on who they allow to be employed and be part of this organization? Because they are literally, I think, infiltrated by corrupt people, and that's why it's been brought down. And the human smuggling issue too. They're laundering money through Catholic Charities to implement human smuggling.
Look at Ted McCarrick.
Yeah.
Okay. Ted McCarrick was extremely tied into the funds, and he was absolutely skimming off the top. Where did he have that envelope, that famous envelope with all of the money in it whenever he was going around passing out money? How did he get that money? Where did it come from?
Yeah.
We know that he was on the foundations board at CRS.
His reputation was as a renowned fundraiser.
And is he in jail?
No, of course not.
Yeah.
I mean, there's no we see this with all these. We see this with the Red Cross. Every organization, every NGO has been hijacked.
It started with Judas.
Yeah.
Judas was the one who was responsible for the apostolic purse. So he was holding onto the purse, but he was skimming off the top. And that's why he was, and then of course, when the spikenard was broken over our Lord's feet, and Judas immediately was incensed. Why all this waste? What was he seeing? He was seeing the value of the spikenard.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to sell it because he wanted to pocket the money.
It's just infuriating to me. I just feel like as a Catholic, I feel like the only check that I will write is to my local church, and that's it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's scandal after scandal, and it's been going on years and years.
They used to take up a second collection to pay the judgments of sexual abuse verdicts. And they label it as that. The basket's going around. My mom used to put a penny in.
Oh,
in an envelope. She put a penny in an envelope and dropped the envelope in there.
Well, part of the problem with the tax exempt status of the Catholic Church, and I'm in favor of the tax exempt status. What I'm not in favor of is the way that the IRS handles what they call religions, because a religious institution, while being a tax exempt organization, is not required to file any financials with the federal government at all, which allows for all kinds of shenanigans, because each individual diocese, each individual parish, each Catholic agency like CRS or Catholic Charities, all of those account for one giant slush fund where they can move that money around without the government seeing any of it. It's a huge problem, especially when you have people like the Ted McCarricks and the Cardinal Supiches of the world who have access to those funds, and they can say, you know what? I need $1 billion right now so that I can squash this person and make sure that they don't ever get to see the light of day with, whatever it is. Yeah. They can use that money for whatever ends they want, as long as they go ahead and replenish the funds at some other point from some other slush fund. So everything is constantly in flux. Everything's moving around. Nobody knows how that money's actually being spent.
Very valid point. There is very little transparency.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a Texas Republican congressman that wanted to initiate an investigation into Catholic Charities. Has it gone anywhere?
Nope.
Yeah.
Nope.
The power is there on their side because it's been hijacked by both sides. So they can neutralize the transparency then, right?
Right.
Yeah. What we really need is for a big donor to CRS or some of these other Catholic agencies to realize that they've been fleeced, and then also realize that Catholic Relief Services, for instance, lied to them. They lied to them. We have reported on what they're up to. And Catholic Relief Services, in turn, turns to the people in the pews and says, pay no attention to Michael Hichborn, the Lepanto Institute. What he says is already been checked by us. It's all lies. Don't listen to him. We do very good works. We don't do all the contraception promoting that they say we're doing. That's fraud. That is the very definition of mail fraud. So when people contribute to CRS, and then they get that fraud that says, oh, pay no attention, we're doing good things. Now, once they realize they've been fleeced and lied to, they can turn right around and sue the person that lied to them. And I think that that's what needs to happen. Somebody needs to sue somebody for fraud.
It really is a tragedy. And I think of, this is why the work that you're doing is so critical. Can you talk a little bit more about Catholic Charities? Because I think that's one that people in this listenership are probably more familiar with than even Catholic Relief Services.
So Catholic Charities is an organization that we tend not to cover at Lepanto, and I'll tell you why. It's a huge organization, and it's divided by each diocese. Every single diocese has I guess you would call it a chapter or an element of Catholic Charities, but each one of those has its own distinct character based upon the character of the bishop. For instance, in Tulsa, Oklahoma, I met with Bishop Slattery a number of years ago, and we were talking about Catholic Charities, and he said, look, we're not affiliated with Catholic Charities USA because Catholic Charities USA has problems. He said, we use our Catholic Charities here in the Diocese of Tulsa to do our pro-life work. He said, you see all those pro-life billboard signs that you know, when you're driving down the road? And I said, yes. He said, we put those up. Our Catholic Charities put those up. And so what he was showing me was that his diocese, the way he was using Catholic Charities, was very, very Catholic and very much in line with the Catholic Church's teachings. However, if you start looking at the Catholic Charities along the border, for instance, what are they doing? They are uncritically assisting people across the border. And when I say that, I don't mean that they're just welcoming refugees. They're not even vetting these people. There's no real process for understanding who these people are or how they're lined up with the children that are being brought across. Do we know that these children belong to these parents?
Right.
What documentation do they have?
Right.
They're not doing any of the checking. And they say, well, you know, we work with Border Patrol or we work with but Border Patrol agents are telling us and telling others that I know that no, we're not doing any of that. So there's a real problem of communication, who is doing what, how things are being done. There's no transparency.
Right. Yeah, it's all really, really frightening. And you mentioned the Catholic Campaign for Human Development. Now, our Catholic Annual Giving Campaign, that's a large portion, isn't it? Are you aware?
Well, so are you talking about the Bishop's Appeal?
The Bishop's Appeal, exactly.
Yeah. Again, each one of those is different depending upon the character of the bishop. And the other thing is that most of them, or at least most of the ones that I've looked into, they don't really go into specifics about what is being funded through the appeal. They say, well, we're funding this category or that category, like outreach and evangelization or Spanish missions or assistance to Black Catholics. Those are the categories. But they don't talk about the specific projects, the specific programs they're using. They don't talk about what literature they're using in order to to finance these projects. They don't talk about any of that. So we don't really know where that money is going, how it's being spent. And again, it's a problem of a lack of transparency. And I have called and I've encouraged our viewers to call the diocese and say, okay, I want to help, but please tell me exactly how this money is being used, what programs, what projects, and they never get a response. Yeah. That to me is a big red flag.
So what I've noticed about the church in most recent history since Pope Francis has come into the pontificate is that they seem to go after what they perceive as enemies like never before. Like, I mean, you have historically more so than we've ever seen in the history of the church. I would argue. What happened to Bishop Strickland and everything else. So there's no dialogue going on, right? I mean, what have they tried to do to silence you?
They simply try to ignore me. They try.
Yeah.
But that's exactly how it works. Why did they go after Michael Voris in public? Because they were able to find little cracks in the things that he would say. What I do, instead of offering an opinion, I simply present and lay out all of the facts that we discover. We found this, here's the documentation. We found this, here's the documentation. And because there are no cracks in the documentation, it's all original source material, they can't go after me. If I were to inject my opinion, sure, they could go after that and they could start hammering away at my opinion or my tone. Michael Hichborn, he's so angry and he's so visceral and, and then they would go after that. This is why it's important to keep personality out of it. Stick to the facts. They can't dispute the facts.
Right. What I try to do, and what I probably should have started this show with, but we'll conclude it with, is just pray and just death to self. I just want the Lord to be glorified and the Lord to use me, and whatever comes out. And if it's a little bit of personality, then oh well, I mean, the Lord, as long as I was earnestly trying to focus on Him and not myself, that'll be okay. And I think you have a big personality too, so you're not telling people that you go out there to bore them. You're just saying that essentially you want to make sure that they understand that the real light of the Lord is Jesus, of the world is Jesus Christ.
Right.
Yeah. So you've been listening to Michael Hichborn from the Lepanto Institute, just a great man doing great work. How can they help support you? How can they contribute if they want to, so that people will know better where should we invest our money when it comes to Catholic?
Sure. If you'd like to help support the Lepanto Institute, help us to continue the investigations that we do, expand the charity reports list that is the hallmark of everything we do. If you go to our website, lepantoin.org, that's lepantoin.org. There's a donate button. We are completely donor driven. We don't get any grants. We don't get any financial funds from the federal government. It's all because of individual supporters who like to help us continue our work. And do check out our charity reports list. It's right there at the very top of the website, lepantoin.org. It says charity reports right at the top. And that'll give you a drop down of around 120 different organizations that we have thoroughly vetted. And you can see they're marked either safe or not safe. And the ones that are not safe, you can click the name of the organization. It'll take you to a full report that shows you exactly what we have found about that organization and why we marked it not safe. Yeah.
So, here in Chicago, Cardinal Supich is turning 75 or right on the brink of it. And, we're all holding our breath with possible excitement. Well, who knows what the successor will be. But he's like made sure that the people under him that are 75 are retired. So who knows? The problem is obviously that the Rome is deciding who's going to be the magisterium in the U.S. and they're not real comfortable with that right now. Are you afraid of the future of the world, the future of America, the future of the church?
Afraid of it? No.
Yeah.
Do I think that things are going to? Do I think things are going to crumble and fall apart? Well, yeah, sure. Because the law of entropy says that everything collapses. So there's really no getting around that. It is going to collapse. But if it does, well, praise be to God, because it's according to His plan and in accordance with His will. And as long as we unite our will with His, which includes suffering, then there's nothing to be afraid of. It hurts. Nobody likes pain.
Right.
But unite your will to His, and then the glory at the end of that is what we look for.
Amen. That's what we got to live for, right? I mean, look at how I'm 60 years old. I mean, go back 100 years, I should be dying any day now. And so we've been blessed with more years than we thought we were going to get or should have gotten. But in the end, eternity is eternity. It's forever and ever and ever. And life on earth in comparison is infinitesimally small. So let me just leave you with this, Michael. Anything else you'd like to say just about people out there, what they can do, what they should be praying for?
In terms of what they can do, I really would ask, go to our website, look at the reports that we just put out on Catholic Relief Services. We just released a 130-page report with Population Research Institute, Stephen Mosier. He's a great man. And this report, we sent a team of investigators on the ground in various African countries. Please look at that report and approach your bishop, approach your priest. Have the report in hand if you can print it out, or at least just print out portions. Show them what we found, show them the evidence, and then ask them to completely withdraw all support from CRS, because it is attacking Christ's poor in Africa. It is ruining souls. And that's really the most important thing in terms of what to pray for. Then pray for your families, pray with your families. Because we are the Lepanto Institute, which is dedicated to the Holy Rosary. Pray the Rosary with your family every day. You will see an immense turnaround in their attitudes and in their understanding of the faith and their life lived in the faith. If you were to pray the Rosary every day, it's 15 to 20 minutes. Just pray the Rosary with your family. You'll see incredible results.
Love the Rosary. And Michael, hearing what you say and what you're doing and are hitting on some of these topics, I know we just made some enemies in this show, and that they're watching us and they're going to try to come after us, is just a sense that I get. How about we finish with St. Michael's prayer and you lead us?
In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost, amen. Saint Michael the Archangel, defend us in battle. Be our protection against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him, we humbly pray. And do thou, O Prince of the heavenly host, cast into hell Satan and all the evil spirits who prowl about the world seeking the ruin of souls. Amen. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Ghost. Amen.
Thank you, Michael. Excellent. You're doing great work, buddy. Really, really, really appreciate it.